Hi, everyone. So, welcome to today's session, which is on pro tips to scoring high in reading comprehensions. This session is brought to you by me, Nilanjan Dutta, a candidate person, Tyler, from the top educators on Unacademy and Unacademy Plus for the CAT and the MBA exams segment. So the purpose of today's session, which is an RC Hacks, is to give you all a total overview on how to approach the reading comprehension sessions. It's a free session, so request all of you to kindly take out the next 1-2 minutes to share the session URL with all your friends and fellow CAT and MB exam aspirants so that more and more people can be part of today's free session. So in the chat window, I've shared the session link to today's session. Kindly post it in various CAT preparation groups and forums so that more and more people can be part of today's session. Also, let's try and keep the session as interactive as possible. So all kind of challenges that you're facing regarding reading comprehensions, let us discuss the same. So before we start, a couple of good news for all of you. So recently we've got permission from the IMS SimCAT team to discuss the SimCAT questions for each of the sections, be it Quants, DILR, VRC, on our Unacademy channel, which is the special classes. So all the SimCAT discussions will be free for all of you who are preparing for CAT 2020 and so on. So do make sure that all of you attending every special class going forward. We'll be discussing IMS SimCAT questions. We've already been discussing in the last couple of sessions. So with this in mind, let's get started with the first of our tips on scoring high in the reading comprehension section. Meanwhile, I hope all of you are sharing the session link with all your friends and fellow CAT and MB exam aspirants. So, what are the first thing you're supposed to do in an RC passage? And that is this. The first 1 minute of any RC passage should be spent in going through the question and options in the passage. Now, the moment I say this, a lot of you will ask, why should I go through the question options before I go through the passage in itself? The reason is simple. If you look at most of the passages, be it in your mocks or in the actual CAT, you would have noticed that there are only 4 to 5 questions per passage. Whereas the passage might be very, very lengthy. The reason is very simple. In most passages, you can break it up into a 30-70 rule. What is that? It is only 30% of the passage that is important as far as the questions or the marks are concerned. Which means in almost in every passage, 70% of the passage is redundant as far as the questions or marks is concerned. And that is where most of the aspirants tend to waste time. The biggest reason why people find the VRC section lengthy is because they keep rereading the passages. Because you don't understand it the first time, you'll tend to keep reading the passages, and in the process, 70% of the passage is irrelevant as far as questions are concerned. You end up rereading those portions of the passage. Instead, what is important is focus only on 30% of the passage that is important as far as the questions and marks are concerned. So the moment I say that, the next thing some of you will ask is, how do I know which 30% is important as far as the questions or marks are concerned? And that is where it's important that in the first 1 minute, you go through all the questions and options in the passage so that you know which is that 30% of passage which is relevant as far as the questions are concerned. Remember, in almost every question, it's only 4 or 5 lines of the passage that is important, not more than that. So how do you identify those 4 or 5 lines which are important in a passage? Any suggestions, anybody? How do I identify which are those 4 or 5 lines in a passage which are important? So you can use the chat window to provide your opinions. So all those who are live, you can use the chat window to provide your opinions. Shrikar, the session has started quite some time back, so you can refresh your browser in case you're having any issues. So Nikita is saying look for similar words or sentences. Okay, so that is one possible thing. We'll discuss on that. Anirban is saying scanning technique. Okay, so how do you scan? How do you scan a passage? Anirban, how do you scan a passage? So let us look at what are the two broad type of questions that are there in the passage. So usually you have two kinds of questions that come in passages. The first type is where they'll particularly point to a particular line or a phrase in the passage or a particular para in the passage, and they'll ask a direct question on the same. For example, they lift a particular line in the passage and say, what does the author infer by, what does the author imply when he makes this particular line or phrase? So usually 2 or 3 questions in every passage are of this type, which is specific to a particular line or phrase of the passage. So in that case, what do you need to do? All you need to do is when you're reading the passage for the first time, you need to identify where that line or phrase is located. So when you're reading the passage the first time itself, you have those 2-3 lines in mind. Remember, in the first 1 minute, you've gone for all the questions. So when you're reading the passage the first time, you already have in mind that this particular line or this particular phrase has the direct questions in mind. So the moment you encounter the line or phrase, all you do is stop. You pause, and then what you do is look 3 lines before and 2 lines after. Remember, the answer to the question is only determinable using these 5 lines. That is 3 lines before to 2 lines after. And this applies for all such questions where they're particularly pointing out to a line and or phrase. Just look 2-3 lines before until 2-3 lines after the answer is hidden. And the biggest problem that people face in RCs is this. So usually in RCs you have 4 options, right? So usually what they'll do is they'll particularly mention option B in those 5-6 lines. So usually what the examiner does is in those particular 5-6 lines, he'll mention option B. And somewhere else in the passage, maybe towards the end of the passage somewhere, he will mention option D. So what happens as a result is aspirants tend to get confused. Why? Because they've read about both option B and option D in the passage. And this is where the examiner tries to screw you up. He'll confuse you because you've read both option B and option D. In fact, since D comes to the end of the passage, you will remember D ahead of B and you might be tempted to mark D. But remember, the correct answer in all such questions will always be option B, which is mentioned in those 5-6 lines. So automatically, it's helping you in two ways. One, it's helping you quicker answer those questions. Secondly, it's improving your accuracy by directly telling you that this is the answer to the question instead of confusing you with other options that may be mentioned somewhere else in the passage. And this is usually the trick that students get lured into. Is this clear to everybody? And this holds for all questions where you're picking up a particular line, a phrase, or a sentence from the passage and you're asking a direct question. Just focus on 3 lines before and 2 lines after. Those 5 lines are your Bible for such a question. Nothing else matters. The rest of the passage could be things that the author thinks in a different light and has nothing to do with that particular phrase. Also, what another thing that happens with aspirants is usually what they do is people who are slow readers, people who don't have much reading habits, they end up wasting 5-6 minutes reading a passage. And then after reading the passage, when they move on to the questions, they suddenly do not remember much of the passage. And again, they need to relocate the particular line of phrase where it is occurring. And in that process, per question, 2-3 minutes gets wasted. In this approach, what will happen? When you read the passage the first time for 5-6 minutes itself, you will locate those lines because your entire focus is on those 2-3 lines which have direct questions. So automatically, you are getting your job a lot more simpler. Is this clear? Those who feel it's not clear can mark no and then can ask the question using the chat window. Hi, Rahul. Meanwhile, I hope all of you are sharing the session link with all your friends and fellow CAT and MBA aspirants. The link is there in the chat window. Please share the session link with all your friends so they can join in the free session. Sargato, all I'm saying is first 1 minute, you're going through all the questions. So any particular direct questions that are there in the passage where they're referring to a particular line of phrase, even before you start reading the passage, you're getting aware of that particular line of phrase. So what you're doing, when reading the passage the first time itself, the moment you find that line, you pause, you go 3 lines before, 2 lines after, reread those 5 lines and mark that answer then and there. You do not need to waste again 2-3 minutes to relocate that particular line in the passage because now you've read already the passage after reading the questions. So that is why always go through the questions first and then the passage instead of doing the reverse where you're blindly reading the passage and then again reading the questions. You have to again end up wasting time reading the questions, reading the passage a second time. So there are broadly 2 types of questions. One is these, where they're referring to a particular line of paragraph, which is now it's very easy. It can be done in a couple of minutes. The other type of questions are based on the tone of a passage, theme of a passage, central idea of the passage, overall implication of the author, nature of the writing, and so on. So basically, these are not related to a particular line, but refer to the entire passage. Look, Rahul, even I would say practice reading a lot. Practice reading a lot. But when you're attempting RC passages, read the questions first and then do the passage, because that is time bound reading. In verbal, when you're attending the exam or in your mocks, it is time bound reading. But in your leisure time, go into normal reading. We'll come to that, Rahul, a little later. The next type of questions are those on tone, theme, central idea, nature of the passage. Again, in such kind of questions, you do not need to read the entire passage. All you need is this. First 2-3 lines of the first para. And the last para's first 2-3 lines, last para's last 2-3 lines. So that is all that matters. First para's first couple of lines, last para's first couple of lines, last para's last couple of lines. That is all that matters as far as any question on tone, theme, or central idea or nature of the passage. Rest of the passage is immaterial for any of these type of questions. Now, some might ask that what if there are 4 options A, B, C, D, and first paragraph is hinting at option A and last paragraph is hinting at option C. Can anybody tell me which option do you mark in such cases? Which option should one mark in such cases? So at any point of time, in case the first part and the last part are contradicting, always give your priority to the last para. Because remember, last para is where the author has got his final chance to convey what he wants to say. So irrespective of how much he wants to digress during his writing, at the end, he must provide his own opinion. In fact, if you remember, that is the way you're asked to write essays as well. Initially, you introduce the topic, then you move into various aspects on which you want to discuss about the topic, and finally, you start moving into what your opinion on the topic is. Which is why the last para is always more important than the first para. So in case there are conflicting options, go with option C, because C is what is being dictated in the last para. So the priority is going to be the last para over the first para, in case they give you conflicting options. So basically, again, only 5-6 lines are enough to answer the questions for the remaining questions on tone, theme, central idea, nature of the passage. The rest of the lines are not important as far as answering these questions. The other thing that is important is reading the options closely, because based on the options, it matters a lot which option is closest to what is being illustrated in this first and last para. So again, it's just a game of 5-6 lines that matter in answering the questions. So remember this, it's ultimately a game of only 30% of the passage that is relevant, 70% of the passage is irrelevant as far as marks is concerned. Remember, your ultimate objective is to get marks. The other thing, a lot of you have this notion that speed reading. Please note, speed reading is a myth. Nobody can do all this glancing through the passage and you'll retain the passage. That never happens. It's better to practice smart reading, where it's important that you retain your passage. So just glancing from left to right, the passage is not enough. Retain the passage and retain important things for the passage, which is why go through the questions first and then smartly read the passage, smartly identify that 30% of the passage which is important. For example, let's say when read the passage, the second para you did not understand. And it can happen that a passage is from a very different area, for example, sociology or something which you're not very comfortable with, and you don't understand a second para. A biggest mistake people make is they keep rereading that passage to try and understand it again. Whereas, what should you do? You should look very simply. Is there a direct question in that passage, in that paragraph? If yes, then you may reread those 4-5 lines which are important. If no, then you will skip that para and move ahead. No rereading passages where there is no marks involved. Remember, your ultimate objective is to get marks in the passage. Any questions thus far? Any questions thus far on whatever we've discussed as far as RCs are concerned? Yes, Saugata, you had a question? So is it clear to everybody how for every question you can get the answer in just 4-5 lines? Do not invest your time in the rest 70% of the passage. Before we move forward, I saw Rahul asking a question on what are the source to prepare RCs from. So one of the best books for VRC doesn't have many good books to be very honest, but possibly the only book that you can refer to is the one by the McGraw-Hill Education Group, which is basically the book by Arun Sharma and Meenakshi ma'am. So Meenakshi Upadhyay ma'am and Arun Sharma, these are possibly they combined have written the McGraw-Hill Education books for VRC. That's possibly the best book that you can refer to as far as VRC for the RC section is concerned. Other than that, what you can do is if you have study material of a time IMSCL, you can refer to that, or past year mocks is possibly the best source to prepare RCs from. from. Why? Because of two reasons. The first thing that I'll tell you is diverse reading. What does diverse reading mean? It means across areas. So some of the popular areas in which RC passages come in are economics, sociology, psychology, science and technology, so these are the key areas in which they come, and maybe a bit on normal editorial type writing. So it's very important that you get accustomed to each of these types of areas of writing. So what are the best way to prepare the diverse sources? In past year mocks, the person who's setting the mock, or the institute setting the mock, will always ensure that they already give you diverse set of passages in that particular mock, so that automatically you don't use different passages from different types. Also, level of difficulty would anyways be varying. The other thing that you need to do is, how many RCs do you need to prepare? So what you should be doing is 2 RCs per day. So there are approximately 300 days to CAT. So if you practice 200 RCs per day, you automatically get a total of 600 RCs to take away with before CAT is concerned. And what this will do is, it will automatically give you results on CAT, because automatically get familiar with passages. Other than that, what else can you do as far as reading habits are concerned? One, reading novels and storybooks, both fiction as well as non-fiction. What is the other thing you can do? Read editorials. Why is it so? Because what editorial does is, they give you the structure of an RC passage, and it also helps you understand what exactly the author is trying to imply through the passage. So editorial gives you a structured approach to writing and understanding what the author wants to convey. It's very similar to passage reading. The other thing, all those who have very good reading habits, what I've noticed over the years is that they usually, in the mocks or in the actual CAT day, or on average, they get 1 RC at least common. And imagine if you get 1 RC passage common, your job automatically becomes so much simple. You end up saving 4 or 5 minutes of your time because you've already read that passage earlier. So believe it or not, people with good reading habits always get rewarded as far as CAT and mocks are concerned. And remember this, reading habit is something you can pick up only with 6 months in time. You cannot improve on reading habits in the last 1 month. So please don't assume in the last 1 month you'll suddenly improve on reading habits. That won't happen. If you generally want to improve on RCs, start reading from now on, so that by the time you're midway into the mocks in September, October, you have very, very good RC appreciation skills. And always, when you're practicing the 2 RCs per day, practice in a time-bound fashion, that is 10 to 12 minutes. Ideally 10 minutes. Initially for starters, you can try 12 minutes, but in a couple of months' time, you have to narrow down to 10 minutes. Within 10 minutes, you should be done with marking all the questions in that RC passage. And the first step is, first 1 minute, you go through all the questions in the passage and then move on to reading the passage as we just mentioned. So Gautav, I understand what you're saying. You're saying a lose focus while reading, which is why all I'm saying is know where to focus on. If you're reading a 600 line passage, not 600 lines, sorry, if you're reading a 60 line passage, you will lose focus. But instead, if you're reading only 15 lines, then suddenly you will not lose focus. So all you need to do is, when you read the questions for the first 1 minute, understand which are those 2 3 lines which are important in the passage, and put all your efforts into those 2 3 lines, plus the first paragraph couple of lines, last paragraphs couple of lines. That is all that matters as far as the questions are concerned. So it's difficult to keep your focus for all 60 lines, but make sure that for those 15 lines, you are focused. So know where to focus, Shogato. That'll automatically solve your problem of retaining all 60 lines. Ajay, I understand that VRC pulled you down. So, Ajay, one thing, are you part of the Unacademy Plus CAT subscription? What I would recommend you is, as soon as possible, join into the Unacademy Plus 12-month subscription plan, because there we are having live classes for reading comprehension. In fact, one of the authors that I was mentioning about, Meenakshi Upadhyay, she also teaches an Unacademy Plus. Arun Sharma teaches on Unacademy Plus. So a lot of us are teaching on Unacademy Plus. So do make sure you subscribe to the 12-month subscription plan. In fact, I can share with you the link as well, where you can go and subscribe. And also, you can use this code Nilanjan Dutta subscribing for a 12-month Unacademy Plus subscription plan. That'll take care of not just your VRC needs, but all your section needs, including the DILR live classes. You can go there by clicking on the link that I've just shared. Batch 1 for CAT 2020 has already started, so do not delay further. Make sure that you're going and you're giving every section a 20-25 marks boost, but do that before tomorrow afternoon. So tomorrow, second half, we start with a number of classes for CAT 2020. So before that, including we have Diala classes also tomorrow lined up. So before tomorrow mid-noon, make sure that you're subscribed to Unacademy Plus. I've provided the link in the chat window. Just click it and you can subscribe. While subscribing, go for a 12-month subscription, because CAT is more than 10 months away. So to retain your recordings for CAT as well as your non-CAT exam, that and IFT and SNAP, you have to be subscribed for 12 months. Going for a lower month duration subscription will not help, because you lose the video recordings in the actual exam time. However, you can use the discount code Nilanjan while subscribing to get the subscription at an even cheaper price than the prices quoted here. So what you need to, that'll also give you access to the Quants live classes as well, other than the VRC and the DR live classes. So all you do is choose a subscription plan, like 12-month subscription plan. Here in the referral code section, you enter the code. Remember, there's no space for Nilanjan and Dutta in the code. And then once you click on apply, you'll see apply successfully. And then when you check out, you'll see that the price is reduced, and then you can check out. Remember, it's one subscription plan that gives you access to live classes for all the educators, for all the sections, not just CAT, but OMETs as well, like XAT, IFT, and so on, as well as GDPI as well. So, but do make sure you're subscribing before tomorrow noon. The link have again been shared in the chat window, which you can go and click to be a part of the subscription. So let's move forward. So as I said, all of you need to practice reading diverse topics, and that include, these are key areas which are important: philosophy, sociology, psychology, economics, sports, science and technology, and so on. Because these are the ones where you have more frequent RC passages coming in. And the best source, I said, is, other than the book by McGraw Education by Arun Sharma and Meenakshi Upadhyay ma'am, is past year mocks. The next thing that comes in is, what is the ideal time per passage that you need to focus on? So ideally, from exam perspective, This is how I would say the time per passage should be like. Passages, the time would depend on the number of questions. The passage usually a longer number of questions because the questions that take up your time. It's also the fact that usually more question passages are a little longer than others. So if the passage has 3 questions, approximately 7 minutes, 4 questions, 9 minutes, 5 questions, 10 minutes, 6 question passages, 11 minutes. If you notice, the ratio of minutes per question keeps increasing as you go upwards. So the time per passage keeps, as you have less number of questions, time per passage increases. As you have more number of questions, the time per question reduces in the passage. So always it's wiser that in case you're falling short of time, choose passages with a higher number of questions because those can be attempted in a lower duration. So remember, attempting 6 question passages takes 11 minutes, whereas attempting 2 sets of 3 question passages take 14 minutes. So it's always wiser to attempt passages which have higher number of questions because then you'll be able to attempt more marks. The more questions you attempt in VRC, the higher the chance of getting a total higher. Because remember, in VRC, accuracy is a little difficult to play with. But as far as practicing on a daily basis, when you're practicing 2 RCs, what you can take is 10 minutes on an average per RC. As for starters, for the first 2 months, if you're newly preparing for CAT, you might take 12 minutes, but after 2 months, you have to move back to the 10 minutes per passage on an average. The other thing that is important in RC passages is this. When you're taking 10 minutes, 10 minutes is only for solving and marking answers. But your job doesn't end there. And this is where a lot of people make a mistake. All that they're focused on is whether they got 2 correct, 2 wrong, or whether they got 3 correct, 1 wrong, and so on, which is not supposed to be the primary focus. The primary focus is supposed to be the next 10 minutes when you are analyzing the solutions well. It's very important that all of you analyze the solutions well in every RC passage. Why? The reason is very simple. Again, the biggest challenge that most of you face is confusion between options. So let's say one of you face the confusion between options B and D. So you're very confused. It's a 50-50 chance for you. What did you do if ultimately you marked the answer option D and you left? Now when you look at the solutions, you find that you've got option B correct. So what do? You're not bothered. And this is where a lot of aspirants make a mistake. I understand that you got option B correct, but remember this, you had a confusion with option D. It's still important that you go and you analyze the solutions and you understand why option D is incorrect, why option B is the better option. In fact, you've analyzed the RC option in the past, you would have noticed they'll explain to you why option A, C, and D are incorrect, and then they'll mention to you why B is correct. Unlike in quants, where they'll directly solve it and say the answer is option B. Unlike that, in RCs, the person who's writing the solution is expected to write why A, C, and D are incorrect, and then why B is correct. And that is something that understanding is very important. So that next time, in a similar kind of setting, you don't have even that confusion between two options. So remember, every RC passage 10 minutes of solving is important, but 10 minutes of analyzing the solutions is equally important. Any questions? So I see Nikita asking a question, and her question is, what about vocabulary? So I'll break it into two parts. Firstly, from CAT perspective, vocabs is not important. Why? Because usually it is more of a paragraph driven thing and a particular line or phrase driven thing. And none of the options are usually one words, except for things like tone, theme, and so on. Except for things like tone, theme, and so on, most of the options or the questions are not one word, which is very difficult to understand. So mostly they are lines or phrases, which means if you read the line as a go or you read the paragraph, you'll get an understanding of what the author is trying to say. So try and decipher the meaning by reading that particular line or reading that particular phrase. The only exception to this could possibly be questions which are on the tone or theme of the paragraph, where they might be using words like didactic, sarcasm, and so on. So, in such cases, what you're supposed to do is whenever you encounter such a new word, where it's a one word option, please try and after the RC is done, try and look up the meaning of that word, so that next time you get the same word in a tone or theme question, you automatically understand that, okay, fine, this is what qualifies as sarcastic tone, this is what qualifies as didactic tone. So you get that drift automatically because you have already encountered such an option in the past. So whenever you encounter those one word options, make sure that you go through that in the, because usually those questions are related to tone or theme of a passage. So even a different passage can have the same tone or theme. Whereas questions specific to the entire passage, like a line or phrase, they will not be word dependent. So their vocabulary is not important. Having said that, if you're giving exams which are non-CAT like VAT, IFT, SNAP and all, their vocabs do play a role. So do not worry. Vocabs are going to be taught. So what you can do is refer to a book called Word Power Made Easy. That is very useful for non-CAT exams for the vocab section. So Anvish, I already discussed the part on this, on tone or theme of a passage. Just look at this. First paragraph, first two, three lines. Last paragraph, first two, three lines. Last paragraph, last two, three lines. That's it. So in case these 5, 6 lines are hinting at option D, then mark the answer as option D. Again, do not bother about the fact that option B is mentioned somewhere else in the passage. Doesn't matter. The fact that option D is coming out from these 5, 6 lines is all that matters. Second thing, The bigger challenge is, let's say option C is being mentioned in the last paragraph, first two and last two lines, whereas option A is being hinted at in the first paragraph's first two lines. In such cases, your priority should always be given to the last paragraph, because remember, we always say last paragraph or summarizing paragraph is where you're supposed to give your opinions. That is your last chance to communicate what you want to say, your tone or theme. However much you might have digressed in the previous paragraph, you have to summarize or provide your ultimate opinion now. So always give priority to the last paragraph. So first minute itself, note down the questions in the passage so that you're alert when you're reading the first paragraph, first two, three lines, and the last paragraph, two, three lines, and you're alert on the options that are there on the theme or the tone. So automatically you will be able to do it quicker because reading only five, six lines. Second thing, you'll do it more accurately as well because you're removing the distractions of other lines. Does that answer your question, Anish? Anish, I'll come to that in a couple of minutes. Let's just cover up the pointers and then I'll come to that, Anish. Most important thing that you need to do is practice more of passages from past year mocks and analyze them thoroughly. As I said, 2 RCs daily is important so that you can practice 600 RCs by CAT and so on. With 600 RCs with practice till CAT day, that would have been a job very well done. So any other questions, anybody on RCs? I'll come to Anish's question in a while. Anybody have any questions on RCs? How to attempt? So mention this ways to prepare, how much time to give per RCs, diverse reading, 2 RCs per day, reading habits that need to get. I've discussed all of this in today's session. Source of preparing, books. So everything has been covered. So anybody have any other questions as far as RCs are concerned? So one more thing. So as you might be aware, we've got permission from the IMS SimCat team to discuss the IMS SimCats in our special classes, which is why over the last few special classes, as well as in the upcoming special classes, we will be discussing previous year IMS SimCats as SimCat questions as well. All these sessions are going to be free on my Unacademy channel. So just make sure that you're attending each and every session. If you want updates on the sessions, what you can do is drop me a message at this number so that you get reminders or updates whenever there is a SimCat discussion session on my. So it's on a regular basis. It's on a regular basis. It'll be keeping on happening for the next few months or so. So do make sure you're dropping me a message in case you're genuinely interested in being a part of these special classes. All of them are free. There's no fixed day or time, Nikita. Just make sure you're dropping me a note. I'll be adding you to the group. I'll add you to the WhatsApp group whereby you can be aware of whenever there's a session. There's no particular day of the week or particular time of the week on which I take a session. I don't know how many of you are aware of this, but I'm a working professional myself, so it's not that I have a particular day or time slot when I can take sessions. But usually I take them either on weekdays night, like around this time, 10, 10:30, 11, 9:30 this time, or I take them on weekends. I take them. Weekends either morning or afternoon, evening. Weekdays, I don't take any sessions before 8 p.m. usually. So coming to Onish's query, so do make sure you're attending these SimCAT discussions because they are past your mock discussion. That will be really helpful to you. Other than that, are you subscribed to Unacademy Plus, Onish? Those of you who aren't yet, please make sure that you're getting subscribed before tomorrow noon because that will give you access to all the live classes by me for DILR, quants, as well as VRC by other educators. So by tomorrow noon, all of you must be subscribed to the. What I can see is most of you are already subscribed. Those who aren't subscribed, do make sure that you are subscribing by tomorrow noon. Remember, this is your chance to give each of your sections a plus 2025 marks boost. The link to go and subscribe I've shared in the chat window on the right hand side. Just click on that link and select the 12-month subscription plan while subscribing. Remember, that's also the most recommended and the cheapest of the lot out of these four, and the most useful as well, given that CAT is 10 months away. So with your subscription plan, you go for the 12 months. When you're selecting it, use the discount code Nilanjan Dutta while subscribing to get the CAT subscription at an even more cheaper discounted price than what is quoted here. So all you need to do is select your subscription plan here in the referral code section, enter the code Nilanjan Dutta, there's no space for Nilanjan and Dutta. You click on apply, the discounts will come. So being a calendar percentiler, this is my own discount code. So the moment you do this, you'll get access. I'll add you personally to all these live classes by me. What you can do is you can drop me a message before subscribing. At this number, 9836457. Sorry. 9836479 So do drop me a message for subscribing. And once you subscribe, let me know. I'll add you to all the groups, the quants live classes, the other live classes, including the other educators as well. That goes through for all of you, on which others as well. What you can do is click on the subscription link that I've shared just now on the right hand side. I'm pinning it as well, and do it before tomorrow noon because tomorrow we have the next set of sessions. We have Diala sessions also lined up tomorrow, as well as other topics as well. So do make sure that all of you are subscribed to the 12-month subscription plan before tomorrow noon. And do not forget to use the code Nilanjan Dutta while subscribing. Remember, there's no space for Nilanjan and Dutta. And do make sure that all of you are pinging me so that you're being aware of any further classes, be it the free classes for SimCAT discussions or the Unacademy Plus class. You're not missing out any single class. So do make sure that you are pinging me today itself. And I hope to see Anish. I hope to see you in tomorrow's sessions. And do inform all your friends as well to subscribe before tomorrow noon. Any other questions, anybody? So once again, I've shared the link in the chat window. So all the very best to all of you. Hope to see all of you in this subscription live classes tomorrow. So make sure you subscribe by tomorrow noon. Make sure you're using the discount code Nilanjan Dutta while subscribing. So improving focus on reading. Just make sure that you are reading more often, firstly. And secondly, what I said, that first 1 minute approach. That is, know what to focus on. There are two parts to it. One is the shortcut route. That is, know what to focus on and then start reading. And the second part is read more often. So make sure you're practicing 2 RCs daily using this approach. And other than that, if you can do some reading habits, that'll be really, really good for you. Also, if you can practice a bit of online reading, that will be very good, because given that ultimately on exam day you need to do screen-based reading or online reading, it'll really helpful for you if you are good at that. So hope to see all of you subscribing using the code Nilanjan Dutta by tomorrow noon. On that note, thank you everybody, and all the very best once again. Keep calm and bell the cat. Once again on that note, thank you everybody and happy learning.